The last type of loop we want to look at is the for each loop in Java. We use for each loops to iterate over arrays or collections. Let me show you. So I'm going to start by declaring a string array called fruits, and we initialize this with 3 items. Let's say apple, mango, and orange. Now let's say we want to iterate over this array and print each item on the terminal. We can use any of the loops you learned about earlier, like a for loop or a while loop, but we can also use the for each loop, which is a bit easier. Let me show you. First, I'm going to use the for loop to iterate over this array. So we type for, here we declare our loop variable or loop counter. Int I, we set it to 0. As long as I is less than fruits.length, we're going to increment I by 1 after each iteration. And here we simply print fruits of I. Let's run the program and see what we get. So we get each item on a new line. Beautiful. Now, there is another way to write the same code using the for each loop. Here we type for. In parentheses, we declare a loop variable, but the type of this variable should be based on the type of items in our array. So here we have a string array, and that means every item in this array is a string. So here we should declare a string variable. We call it fruit. Here we type a colon and then the name of our array, fruits. Now, in each iteration, fruit will hold the value of 1 item in this array. So here we don't have to declare a numeric counter. We don't have to write a Boolean expression like this. We don't have to increment our counter. It's much easier to iterate over an array. Now, if we print fruit, we get the exact same result as before. Take a look. So the first 3 items are from our for loop, and here's the result of our for each loop. So this is the for each loop. However, this for each loop has a couple of limitations. One limitation is that it's always forward only. So we cannot iterate over this array from the end to the beginning. In contrast, we can easily do this with a for loop. So here we can initialize I to fruits.length. Then we change this operator to greater than and replace this value with 0. So as long as I is greater than 0, we're going to decrement I. The second limitation of the for each loop is that here we don't have access to the index of each item. All we have is this loop variable, which holds the value of each item in this array. In contrast, in our for loops, we can access both the index and the actual item. So I represents the index of each item, and fruits of I returns the item at the given index. So if you need the index, then you will have to use the for loop. Otherwise, it's much easier to use the for each loop.